Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years, and I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years. And I'm here to help you become a more successful and consistent hunter, shed hunter, and outdoorsman. In this episode, we're breaking down one of the most undercovered, least understood forces in shed hunting: how human pressure changes where antlers actually end up, not how pressure changes where animals go. Most hunters understand that at a surface level. They know animals avoid people. They know pressure matters. They know boot tracks, dogs, and vehicles change behavior. What almost nobody understands is how pressure changes where antlers drop. This is where even experienced shed hunters get it wrong. They correctly identify winter range. They correctly locate animals. They see tracks, beds, trails, and droppings everywhere. And then they wonder why the sheds aren't there. The animals didn't leave, the antlers didn't disappear, they still dropped. The pressure rewrote the drop map. Pressure doesn't just move animals, it changes how they move, where they bed, how long they stay, and when antlers actually hit the ground. And if you don't understand those changes, you'll keep hunting empty ground that looks perfect on paper. This episode connects directly with the same pressure framework I talk about a lot with elk, mule deer, and bears. Animals don't respond emotionally, they respond efficiently. They don't panic and flee the unit. They make small, intelligent adjustments that preserve survival with the least energy cost. Those small adjustments are exactly what shifts shed locations. Let's start with the most important concept. Pressure affects animals before shedding happens, not after. Most shed hunters think about pressure reactively. They show up, see people, and assume animals already shed somewhere else. But pressure often influences animals days or weeks before antlers drop. That means the antlers fall where animals adjusted to pressure, not where pressure is currently visible. This is why timing alone doesn't solve the problem. You can hunt early, you can beat the crowds, you can get out right when shedding starts, and still miss the best bone if animals had already shifted their living patterns in anticipation of pressure. Animals learn human patterns pretty fast. Trailheads don't appear overnight. Access points don't suddenly become popular. Pressure builds predictably every spring, and animals that survive year after year recognize that pattern long before the first hiker shows up. This is why popular trailheads consistently produce fewer sheds than expected, even when animals are clearly present. Hunters see tracks crossing roads, they see beds near trails, they see sign everywhere, and they assume antlers should be scattered all over that ground, but pressure changes time spent, not presence. Animals may cross trailheads, roads, and open slopes regularly, but they don't linger there. They don't bed deeply. They don't rest long enough for antlers to drop. Those areas become travel zones, not living zones. Antlers don't fall on highways, they fall in living rooms. Popular access points turn good habits into movement corridors. Animals pass through efficiently, often at night or during low human activity windows. They save their resting, feeding, and bedding for places that feel predictable and secure. This is where a lot of hunters get fooled. They confuse activity with productivity. Just because animals are using an area doesn't mean they're shedding there. Pressure strips time out of the equation, and time is what drops antlers. Under pressure, animals compress their living space. They reduce unnecessary movement. They choose bedding locations that offer visual barriers, scent protection, and escape routes. They adjust travel routes to minimize exposure, even if it means more difficult terrain. These changes can be subtle. Animals don't necessarily relocate miles away, they shift several hundred yards, sometimes less. And those small shifts completely change where the antlers end up. Let's talk about bedding under pressure because this is one of the biggest drivers of shed relocation. In low pressure environments, animals bed where it's thermally efficient and close to feed. South facing edges, the popular place for antlers. Open benches, areas with good visibility. Those spots feel safe when disturbance is low. As pressure increases, those same spots become more of a liability. Visibility works both ways. Openness invites detection. Animals respond by bedding where they can't be seen easily, even if conditions are slightly worse. That means thicker timber, broken terrain, steeper side hills, benches tucked just out of sight, north-facing pockets that hold shade and cover. Those are not places shed hunters prioritize. They're harder to glass, they're harder to walk. They don't look pretty and they don't scream winter range or shedding range, but under pressure, those become primary living areas. Antlers drop where animals bed repeatedly, so when bedding shifts, shed locations tend to shift with it. Travel behavior changes too. In unpressured conditions, animals often travel directly between feed and bed. Trails are efficient, routes are predictable, movement is exposed but acceptable. Pressure breaks that pattern. Animals start sidehilling instead of crossing open slopes. They follow timber fingers instead of ridge lines. They choose routes that provide cover even if they're longer or steeper. They braid trails instead of committing to one. This inefficient travel is exactly what increases antler drop probability, but only in the adjusted routes, not the original ones. Hunters often keep walking the clean, obvious trails while animals are now traveling just off to the side in broken terrain that doesn't look important. This is why pressured animals drop antlers in places that don't make sense unless you understand that they were pressured. Antlers start showing up on the backside of slopes instead of on the front, in timber pockets just off main trails, on benches below popular glassing points, in side hill cuts that force awkward movement, in pressure shadows where human activity fades. Those areas aren't random, they're the byproduct of animals solving pressure problems efficiently. Another critical concept is that pressure doesn't just change where animals are, it changes how long they stay anywhere. Under pressure, animals shorten feeding bouts, they bed longer, they move during lower risk periods, they avoid lingering exposed zones. That means fewer antlers drop in obvious feeding areas, even if animals still use them daily. Feeding zones become hit and run locations. Bedding zones become extended stay locations. This flips where sheds accumulate. Hunters who only focus on feed, they miss this entirely. They walk green slopes, open flats, and south-facing hillsides where animals feed briefly and then leave. Meanwhile, antlers could be piling up in the darker, quieter places where animals spend most of the day. Pressure also affects when antlers drop. Stress accelerates shedding for some animals, especially mature ones. Increased movement under pressure combined with fatigue and hormonal shifts due to daylight can cause antlers to drop earlier, but not necessarily where animals end up later. This creates a timing mismatch that confuses a lot of shed hunters. They show up after pressure increases, hunt where animals currently are, and miss sheds that dropped earlier along adjusted travel routes or temporary bedding zones. This is one of the reasons people say, I'm finding old sheds but nothing fresh. The fresh sheds dropped somewhere else during the adjustment phase. Understanding this requires thinking backwards. Instead of asking, where are animals now? You have to ask, where did pressure force them to slow down 2 weeks ago? That question can change everything.
Step into the backcountry and step up your elk hunting game at Elk Camp 2026. This isn't a seminar, it's an immersive experience with real field training alongside successful elk hunters Matt and Saxton Hartsky. You'll learn how elk think and move, break down terrain like a pro, call with confidence, and practice 3 days of real-world elk hunting scenarios that mirror what you'll face on your own hunt. This camp was built to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be in the mountains. With limited spots and hands-on coaching, you'll walk away sharper, more prepared, and ready to hunt with purpose and confidence. Elk Camp 2026. Sharpen your edge. Register now and prepare for the season like never before at backboneunlimited.com.
Pressure also stacks on itself. Human presence doesn't just add disturbance, it creates more predictability. Animals learn when people show up, when they walk, and how they move. Trailheads create predictable movement. Roads create predictable noise. Popular glassing points create predictable human behavior. Animals exploit that predictability by shifting into zones that humans ignore or avoid. This is why pressure doesn't push animals randomly, it pushes them into specific patterns in terrain. Once you see that, shed hunting can become less about finding animals and more about finding avoidance behavior. Where would you bed if you wanted to see nothing and smell everything? Where would you travel if you wanted to avoid skylining yourself? Where would you rest if disturbance was constant but predictable? Those answers point directly to shed locations under pressure. Another mistake a lot of hunters make is assuming pressure ruins areas permanently. It doesn't necessarily. Pressure reshapes shapes it, it doesn't eliminate it. Animals just often remain within the same general winter range or corridor, but compress into smaller, quieter sub areas. Those sub areas are often overlooked because they're harder to hunt. Serious shed hunters don't abandon pressured areas, they dissect them, they just treat them differently. They identify pressure sources, they map human movement, they look for gaps, dead zones, awkward terrain, places people skip because they're inconvenient, steep, brushy, or boring. Those places often hold the best bone. This is where the connection to elk, mule deer, and bear pressure becomes obvious. Elk don't leave the unit when pressure shows up. They adjust timing, travel, and bedding. Mule deer and bears, they don't abandon drainages, they shift to security cover and move differently. The same rules apply in shed season. Pressure compresses behavior. Compression creates density. Density creates the big antler drops we're all looking for, just not where people expect them a lot of times. Another underappreciated factor is that pressure often pushes animals downhill or uphill slightly, not just laterally. Hunters assume animals move far away horizontally in terms of distance. In reality, animals often move vertically to solve pressure, dropping a couple hundred feet into thicker cover, climbing a couple hundred feet into broken timber, using elevation to break sight lines. Those vertical adjustments are easy to miss on maps and on the ground. Hunters walk past them because they don't fit the classic winter range or shed picture, but those small elevation shifts can hold a disproportionate number of sheds. This is especially true near trailheads. Animals may still be within a half mile of access, but positioned in terrain that breaks visibility and scent. Hunters say there are animals everywhere, but no sheds. The sheds are around, just tucked into the pressure adjusted living zones. Another pressure related mistake is assuming animals only respond to direct human pressure. They respond to indirect pressure too. Noise, scent, dogs, vehicles, repeated human patterns, even visual exposure from distant ridges. Animals don't need to be bumped to adjust. Anticipation alone is enough. This is why sheds often show up in places that seem disconnected from pressure. The animals adjusted before you saw them. Pressure also compounds with in-seasonal stress. Late winter and early spring are already demanding. Fatigue is high. Energy reserves are low. Any added stress amplifies behavioral changes. This is why pressure has a bigger impact on shed locations than a lot of hunters realize. It's not just disturbance, it's disturbance layered into exhaustion. Under those conditions, animals choose the safest, most predictable micro areas available. They sacrifice optimal forage and thermal efficiency for security. Antlers fall where animals feel safe enough to stop worrying. That's the real key. That's the living room. If an area looks good but feels tense, animals aren't going to linger there. That's not a living room. If an area looks mediocre but feels secure, animals will live there. Sheds follow security. Once you internalize that, pressured landscapes start to make more sense. You stop walking obvious slopes. You stop chasing tracks across open ground. You stop assuming trailheads are dead zones or gold mines. Either way, instead, you hunt the shadows, the edges, the awkward terrain, the places pressure funnels animals into unintentionally. I have found sheds in some gnarly little twisted fingers that just don't make any sense. There's not even any good feed there, but the animal felt safe. So this is not about avoiding pressure, it's about using it. Pressure creates patterns just like terrain, weather, and food do. Most hunters see it as a problem. Thinking hunters see it as information. If you want to consistently find sheds in pressured areas, you have to stop asking where animals are and start asking where animals feel least exposed. Where are they safe? Where is their living room? That shift will immediately improve your results. Pressure doesn't eliminate opportunity, it concentrates it, just not where you're used to looking. Now, if you're serious about sharpening this kind of judgment, that's exactly why I built Team Backbone. It's more than just a membership, it's an inner circle for hunters who want to think clearer, read terrain better, and make better decisions when it matters most. Inside, you're going to get 20% off site wide on all Backbone Unlimited gear, the option to have a t-shirt shipped to your door every month, full access to the digital content vault packed with guides, checklists, and backcountry strategies, a private Facebook group with direct access to me, and a community of driven hunters, direct call, text, or email access to me for personalized advice, and automatic entry into monthly gear giveaways. This is built for the hunters who are done guessing and ready to understand why animals do what they do. Thanks for being here. I appreciate each one of you. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.